All right, everyone, we're here for our second brown bag. It is all about marketing to techies and conversations with some engineers. I'm here with two of Rackspace's finest principal engineers, Ant Messerli. He's a principal engineer for 14 years. Major Hayden has been an engineer at Rackspace now for almost 10 years. And I met both of them when I was doing technical project management in the cloud and working on our moving to our next-gen OpenStack cloud. And so these are highly technical folks, and I just want to ask you, starting out Major, what comes to your mind when you hear the word marketing?
So the first thing that comes to mind is fluff, something that gets in between me and the things I want to know about a product or a company. But I feel like what marketing really ought to be is that thing that tells the story about why the product exists, what value it's going to bring to me, and what I can get from it.
For Ant, what do you feel about this when you hear the word marketing?
I usually think about somebody trying to sell me something I probably don't need. I didn't think about it before, but then they kind of put a spin on it where I kind of start thinking about it or kind of want to look into it.
And you're like, I really don't need this.
Yeah, usually.
But you guys do buy products, so how do you end up finding them? How do you find them, Ant?
Once I've determined I want a product or want to look for one, I usually will hit up Google, try to see what's out there. If I can't find any reviews or forums that kind of talk about the product, then I'll probably hit up Amazon and just kind of start looking through reviews and seeing what's popular, seeing who didn't like it and why they didn't like it.
And a coupon code is always kind of important too.
Yeah, I mean, being able to find coupon codes, good deals, whether or not do they charge tax, do they charge shipping, is the shipping fast? If I order a product, I want to get it quick, so just trying to find the sites that have all those benefits.
Major, I know you're a little bit different. You do Google the products, and you said that that's kind of the fast track to fluff. But you favor kind of word of mouth, right?
Yeah, so for me, it's a lot of, what are other people using? Like, what are other people in my user community, let's say, using? Or what do I get via some of the curated things that I receive, like email lists that I join, that kind of thing. So for me, it's a lot more about what are people who have similar interests to me saying about different products and saying about how useful they are and what value it brings to them.
And even you found that attending conferences and trade shows, that's a really good place for word of mouth to happen as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's great to be able to, you see a booth and you see a name of a product and you're like, well, that's interesting. Maybe it solves something for me. And you're sitting around at lunch and you ask, hey, does anybody know about product X or whatever? And someone's like, yeah, we used that before and it really helped. And someone might say, oh, we're using it now and it saves us tons of time when we do these things. That kind of stuff is really valuable because I'll have follow-up questions to say, okay, well, does it work with Ansible, or does it work with Linux, or does it work with OpenStack? I can ask follow-up questions.
So, you've now discovered the product. How do you actually decide to buy it? What are some of the triggers that make you want to buy it?
I think a lot of times it's just trying to find out whether or not that if I can buy a product and then what can I do with it later on or make it better later on. So is it expandable? Is it hackable? Is there a community of people talking about it? Things like that, which kind of make the product more valuable after I bought it, are things I'm really interested in kind of looking at and doing.
Major?
Yeah, for me, I like finding things that I don't have to do a lot of work to see the value from them. So I don't want to have to go and change a whole bunch of things about my day to be able to go and use this product or be able to get some value from the product. And also, I really like finding products that, as you said, don't have that level of lock-in. So, hey, if I change my phone, then I want my smartwatch to work with that new phone. Or if I, go from one computer to the other, I want the monitor to work with this new computer that I purchased.
And you've had a conversation about the delta, right? Like, how much improvement do I get versus how much effort's expended? And I think that talks to that.
Right, yeah. And I mean, a good example is Pebble. I mean, so I'm an Android user, and it integrates really well with Android. Integrates well with apps that I have on Android. And so I don't have to do a lot of work other than connect it via Bluetooth and make sure it's charged, and then I get tons of value out of having it.
And you said another thing when you're deciding to buy is really the documentation. Like, what sort of documentation's available? I imagine that's important to both of you guys.
Yeah, so I mean, documentation is critical, like when you actually go to try to use it, obviously. But I think it also shows how much the company is thinking about the users after the sale and thinking about those users that want to go in and do a lot of DIY type work. So when I see a company that has a lot of documentation that's very easy to find, I think that's a company that's a lot more transparent. It's a company that wants to, that's vested in the customer experience.
Awesome. And then finally, you said that it's important that there is that level of support, right? If something goes wrong, you're going to debug it at first, but if it's on the end of the company providing the service, they better be able to resolve it.
Right. So yeah, if we, if we're looking at a product or something and we try it out and it doesn't work, we're going to eliminate all the things that may be on our end, like an environmental issue that makes the product not work. But then once we identify that it's, it's probably not us, I want to be able to go and verify that with someone and either get a fix or find out what I did wrong or something like that.
Awesome. So we're going to get to a question now that I think is fascinating. What's the worst technical marketing that you guys have seen? And there's a lot of bad technical marketing. We know that. And you kind of have not a specific example, but just in general, like what's bad technical marketing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like to be interrupted when I'm trying to do something, either productive or just, even just at leisure. If I'm like looking through a Twitter feed and all of a sudden I see a promoted item, something on Instagram, all of a sudden it starts playing an ad. If you go to a website and it starts playing an ad with sound automatically, a lot of times it's a big turn off, right? I'm trying to do something and I don't want to be interrupted with it. Same thing if the lawn care guy calls all of a sudden in the middle of the day and I'm, doing some emails or some other kind of thing. I don't like to be interrupted like that. So. And
Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V at South by Southwest, he said the same thing. Like the winners of marketing are going to be the people who can find a way to get to their audience without interrupting them. That's just super annoying and a huge turnoff. Major, you have more of a real life specific example that happened at the OpenStack Summit.
Right. So at the OpenStack Summit in Austin, we were walking through the trade show hall and saw a trade show booth that had basically their marketing goal was to say that anybody can run OpenStack, and so they had chmod 777./OpenStack, which to a marketing person they think, well, wait a minute, if I change the permissions in Linux to 777, it means everyone can run the thing. Well, sure, but it also means that everyone can write to it and everyone can read it. So, if you did this with a Word document on a system, someone could show up and delete the Word document. They could go and change the Word document. So it's really terrible. And then also, as a Linux administrator that's focused on security, that's possibly the worst thing you could do. Because then it means anybody could do whatever they want to this file. So someone in marketing sat down and said, wait a minute, this means like everyone can run OpenStack.
And this is awesome. My technical people are going to love it.
And then, as soon as someone with a sysadmin background sees it, I want to hide under the table. Because when I see people do this, I immediately go to them and say, don't do that. There must be another way.
And that's what's so funny to me is that, again, the marketing person thinks that they're really speaking techie. They're hitting up their audience. And this disaster, which was photographed by everyone's taking pictures. The marketer probably thinks, oh, I had the best campaign ever. But it's a disaster. They're taking pictures because they're making fun of them. Right. And this could have been easily avoided if the marketer just would have run it by a technical person. Hey, this is what I'm going to do. Does this make sense? And they would have immediately shut it down.
Right.
And so, that's there's a lot of bad technical marketing. Make sure if you're going to speak techie that you have run it by someone who actually does speak technical. Okay, so we're going to go into this. How do you avoid marketing? And I'm going to ask you that, because I know you don't like it. So what extents do you go to avoid marketing?
Yeah, I would say probably the most obvious one is just using an ad blocker. A lot of times, I would say ad blocker, and then when you look at the Google AdWords and all that, I've kind of trained my brain to kind of avoid those. Usually they're always going to be at the top, but they're not always the best thing to kind of look at.
And I think the ad blocker is so funny because someone I follow, Rian, on Twitter, he wrote, ha ha ha, joke's on you, Wired ad blocker. I can still read your article. These websites are installing blockers to prevent people to read the article if they have ad blocker installed. And technical people are so just frustrated with that they go to the extent of reading the HTML source file to get to the article. That just blows my mind that's how much you guys hate advertising on the web. What about you, Major? Do you have any other things that you kind of avoid marketing?
Yeah, obviously the interruptions, having that interruption pop up, that's the equivalent of sitting down and reading a newspaper. And a bee carries over an ad right in front of you while you're trying to read the newspaper. That'd be frustrating. I'd swat the bee out of the way. But yeah, I think for me too, like I usually try to go straight to the documentation to learn more about the product, or try and figure out a way to get in touch with the user community, whether it's on IRC or email or forum or something like that. So for me, it's really frustrating, especially, and I see a lot in the information security field where there'll be an entire like brochure website about a product, and I read the entire website and I'm like, the product sounds great, I have no earthly idea what it does. And so for me, that's super frustrating, where it's like, no, I want to know the nuts and bolts of like, what does this thing actually do for me?
So we're going to open it up to questions, and I believe the first question that we have is, what company blogs do you read of technical companies that are good, and why do you read them, and which ones are bad, and why do you avoid those? And I know that you don't necessarily subscribe to blogs, but you do find information in other ways online.
Yeah, I mean, I used to do a lot of RSS feeds. I think these days I kind of do a lot more with just Twitter. Just I'll follow the sites that kind of want to get information from. It's usually a quick way to just kind of get all that information. I'll read Hacker News. I'll look at Reddit for on the specific sections. So like Linux specific stuff, OpenStack specific stuff. So I mean, there's a lot of different ways to kind of get different content that way.
Major, do you have any company blogs that you like?
Yeah, for me, the company blogs I enjoy is when it's usually based on a particular person at that company, and their voice comes through and their interests come through. So for me, the CSO of Akamai, for some reason I can't remember his name right now, he has a really good blog where he talks about security, and it's not always a promotion of what Akamai is doing. It's more along the lines of, hey, guess what? You probably run a lot of infrastructure. Here's something you should watch out for that we see in our big infrastructure. So for me, I really enjoy those blogs that are less like a horn yelling out product announcements, and that are more like, hey, guess what? Since we're specialists in this industry, we're going to share a few secrets with you that we've discovered through our work.
Got you. Okay, so real quick, we're going to go through a lightning round. The last Google AdWords that you've clicked.
It's been a long time.
Long time?
Many years.
Many years. The last banner ad that you clicked.
Before then.
The last promoted in social stream thing that you clicked.
It was a Pebble advertisement on Twitter.
On Twitter?
Their new Kickstarter.
I'd probably say the same thing.
Same thing?
Yeah.
Big Pebble
They
fans
did
over
a
here.
big campaign this week, I guess. So.
Yeah.
The last thing that you traded an email for, a legit email.
I think I traded it for a conference just to view the stream.
Okay.
And I think I probably used a fake address.
Major?
For me, I'm allergic to webinars, so I really like white papers and things like that kind of go back to sharing some kind of information with the world. So for me, I think it was like a Verizon or Akamai security report.
And you didn't use YoMama at yomama.com?
No, I used the real address.
Really?
Right,
Okay.
yeah.
And then the last booth that you engaged with at a conference that was a good experience?
So for me, oddly enough, it was a mainframe booth at IBM Interconnect this year.
Okay. Last thing, I know that you guys have expressed interest, but just to pose this question, how can marketers work with techies, and do you even want to work with marketers?
I definitely am not opposed to working with marketers. I think there's some value we can add, and probably a lot of value that they can add too. When you put together like a marketing blog post, I think it's kind of important not to put a lot of salesy marketing fluff into it. If it's technical, try to get down to the technical roots of it, just so it's appealing to those readers. If you're trying to target those kind of people, the sales types or the executive types, it's probably good to have some of that in there, but not too much. Otherwise, it feels like almost a template kind of article. It's just.
So get into the details.
Get into the actual details of it, instead of all the sales and just the features of the thing you're trying to sell.
Major, what do you think?
Yeah, I think technical people should get involved with marketing. I think it should be a two-way street. I think marketing folks should ask technical folks for help, and I think technical folks should also help marketing people who are in marketing hone that story. So I think there's some things that maybe on paper, the list of features that marketing wants to run with look fantastic, but then there's like this extra stuff over on the side that would appeal to somebody like me that may not appeal to a CIO. It's really critical for that story too. It may not need to be front and center, but it needs to be included somewhere.
Awesome. Well, guys, I really appreciate your time with me today and in recording this video. I really appreciate that. And if you guys are watching, We have this Thursday, June 9th at 9:30 a.m., Josh Donut from the TechStot. He's in digital marketing for them. He's going to be here talking about making the humdrum interesting. So I hope you guys are able to show up. And thanks again. Really appreciate it, guys.
No problem.